Hi, Suman. Right on time.
Hi, Divya. How are you doing? Long time.
Long time. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Good to see all this updated Mentza app.
Oh yes, you've not seen the update. Yes. Yeah, it was quite a significant departure from the old one.
Yes, it is. Looks so much nicer.
Excellent. Okay, Suman, do you want to get started? So I very
Yeah, let's do
intrigued
that.
about the topic, and I definitely did not want to be late for this one, right? But why this topic, Suman? You want to?
Yeah, so, well, isn't it ironic that we are, after quite a gap, we are restarting this circle and with this topic? So, yeah, I think I need to do a better job as well. Couple of things, yesterday twice it happened, not twice in one day. My meetings got cancelled, and that's when we were discussing about the topic. There's something else that happened even before that. There was a review meeting with the client where the top guy did not show up, and we had to cancel after people. We were all on the call for a good 5-10 minutes, and there were a whole bunch of people there. So it got me thinking, why this thing is so important, but somehow we don't seem to do a good job of it. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, absolutely, Suman. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
I
I
think there
thought I
was a small
lost you in
lag, but I
between.
can hear you perfectly fine now.
Yeah.
And I do want to there's a few thoughts in my mind, right? There is
Okay.
a small cultural aspect as well, right, where is it
Absolutely.
different in different countries that I want to get to a little later maybe. But
Yeah.
have you always been, there's some people that are very, and we call them type A personalities, and I don't believe in the science, but I'm just giving you a reference, right? And they're
Hmm.
very, it's all about the punctuality, it's all about getting things done on time. And then there's others who think the journey is more important, right? And who kind of take their
Yeah.
time doing it. And it's like punctuality isn't the top priority or isn't a number one goal, right? In their scheme of things. So has this always been something that's important to you, Suman? This being
Good question. Actually, not that much, I would say. And you also mentioned the word procrastination. Uh, so I feel procrastination could be slightly different where you're pushing things out, but then it's only impacting yourself, right? It's not impacting other people. But here we're talking about just being on time, being on time to work, being on time for a meeting, being on time for, whatever we're trying to do. Are we arriving on time? Now, was I always like that? The answer is definitely no. I was always kind of a bit late. I never used to, value it that much. And I learned the hard way. So in one of my companies, which was Intel, they had a culture of being on time. And I think that message hit me pretty hard. So once what happened is I was in a meeting and it was initial days, and the meeting was for an hour and I was presenting, and then at about the 45-50 minute mark, somebody just kind of closed his laptop and left the room and didn't tell me anything. And this happened with the second person and the third person, and I was kind of flabbergasted as I was still presenting in the middle of it. And before you knew it, before you knew it, I was presenting to a empty room, right? Uh, Only later I realized that they had a rule that whoever is presenting, they need to stop the meeting at the 50-minute mark if it's a 1 hour meeting. The idea being that you allow 10 minutes for them to go to the next meeting. Often, the US, the buildings are far apart, so at least they're not late for the next meeting, and they're not obligated to tell you. They just leave, right? And I think it's just one of those values which a company inculcates. And I think I learned the hard way. I think thereafter I've been pretty punctual.
That's very interesting. And Suman, you've seen in the chat, Nancy's also saying she freaks out, right? Sometimes when she's late, even though
Yeah,
nobody else seems to be bothered. How prevalent
right.
is this, Suman? How prevalent is this need to be on time or the lack of it? Right? And let's talk about India. Let's take our country as a context, and maybe you can tell us a little bit, because you've done so much corporate work, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
prevalent?
I think it's very, very prevalent, and I've also I've often thought about this topic, and I think a lot of it is to do with you know uh, our Indian thing, our Indian cultural thing. Think of it from a social setting, right? It's very fashionable to be late to somebody's invitation, uh, and the point is, the guest also doesn't expect you to land up on time, right? If you did, you put them on stress because they may not be ready for all right? So I think it starts from there, and I remember, sometimes I've been to a party early or on time, and slowly people start trickling in, and then right at the end of it, someone comes in very late. Okay, so what he or she is signaling is that he's important, right? That he's busy. There's a message that, look, I'm important. And I think this thinking makes its way into an organization. So when the boss is late, it's because he is busy, right? Now, knowingly or unknowingly, he sets the norm. And then other senior people start acting the same way to show that they are important, right? So it becomes like uh, a culture of tardiness.
That's interesting. Actually, that's very, very interesting. I didn't think of it like that, right? You talked about, even coming in fashionably late to any gathering of any sort, and
Right.
the ones about the boss, I hadn't thought about that at all, Suman. Coming in late, and it also kind of goes along this whole uh, to be overworked, to be always, just about making it to anything is very, very glorified, right, in our scheme of things. And I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
fits what you said, really
absolutely.
fits with that. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there's this
absolutely.
other context of it, right, Suman? So, and the reason why I brought in context, right? Think about Swiss clocks and German accuracy and German, and all of the European whole thing of being on time, right? And then
Yeah,
there
yeah,
are there
right.
are other cultures where, like, relationships. Let's talk about India, right?
Yeah,
Relationships, and those are probably valued more than being at point A. Like, somebody would probably opt to save a relationship over not delivering something on time, for example, right? But
yeah,
in the
yeah,
Western
yeah.
cultures, time is money and money is money, right? So, um, have you noticed any of these differences in the work culture? And folks who are listening in, if you see the join speakers button, Nancy, can you see it? Can you help us out? If you can see it, just feel free to jump right in and tell us what you think about being on time and not being on time. But yeah.
Okay, so I think it's important to think about it, uh, and first understand why it's important, right? Because till we are convinced, till we are committed, we're not going to change our behaviors. I personally think it's extremely important because it essentially goes to to the mindset, it goes to the values, it goes to the culture of the organization. Now, it could be a mindset, if I'm late, I can think, hey, it's up to me, there's no obligation, or it's no big deal. So it's fine, right? So I might decide to not do anything about it. On another level, uh, it's not fine because I did not live up to my commitment if I've given a commitment, right? So it is definitely a lot to do with the mindset. It's a lot to do with the values because what happens is, like this example I gave where everybody starts coming late. uh, if you really think about it, it's the culture becomes one of lack of respect, right? Lack of respect for someone's time, and in general about a lack of respect for other people. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're going somewhere, somebody's called you over, and you're going for a meeting, and you're caught in a jam, which is very often nowadays, given our traffic situation. Now the point is, you can go and say, "Look, I got late because I got caught in a traffic jam." But let's say you were invited to a boss's house. The chances of you being late is less because you would have probably budgeted that extra time to reach, right? And let's say you were going for an examination, chances are you would have definitely been on time, right? So why is it that in one case you are on time but the other you're not? It's essentially boils down to how much importance you attach to that event, right? In the
And what you
office,
said, and I
okay, let's say there
think
is a meeting happening. Yeah, go ahead.
No, Suman, I was saying, and I think the culture of that place, right? Like if it's your boss's house, you want to be on time, but in a company where
Exactly.
everybody is coming in 2 minutes late to a meeting, right? It suddenly
Yeah.
is okay to come in a minute late or come in 2 minutes late, right? So I think, yeah, absolutely agree with you on that.
So on the second one, which you mentioned in an office, let's say it's a meeting and you come in and say, look, I got another call, and you come in late, let's say 20 minutes late, and you say, I got another call. It's really comes down to the same thing. It's about relative importance. You decided to take that call knowing fully well that others are waiting for you, right? So you could have done one or two things. You could have probably sent a message saying that, hey, you know what, this is really important. I need to take this, so others know, or you reschedule, or whatever, right? So something that per person could have done. And the last thing is also about productivity. See, the productivity suffers tremendously because you just imagine a meeting being cancelled, or a meeting with a whole bunch of people sitting there and no work is happening. It has a tremendous impact on the productivity of the organization. So I think it encompasses the whole thing. It's about mindset, it's about values, it's about culture, it's about productivity, uh, and that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah, and so what are some of the things that we can do? So, like, if you see Guljit and what Vijay is saying, right, that it's not just the value, but it's
Yeah,
the respect you have for other people's time, like you said, priority, right? So,
absolutely.
Guljit is also saying that she believes that a boss should be a role model and come on time, right? No doubt about it. So, what if we have to repair a culture, right, Suman? What are the steps that we can go through to kind of get this, right, the time and the timeliness as a priority, and think about other people's time and respect it? And how do you build that culture, or how do you build that behavior?
See, I talked of why it's important, but more from the other person's point of view. But being on time also has a huge benefit for ourselves because it causes much lesser stress. If any of us who've been caught in a traffic jam when you have a flight to catch knows what kind of stress we are talking about, isn't it? Whereas you don't mind reaching the airport early, and then just kind of go to the lounge and maybe have some food or drinks. It's much more relaxing, and the same holds true at the workplace. If you're on time, actually you're much more relaxed, as opposed to just hurriedly walking into something which is already started, right? So
Yes.
there is a reason. I mean, there's a personal reason why we would like to do that. Right at the beginning, I mentioned about two people who kind of stood me up that day. Uh, One of them apologized. She said, "I'm really sorry." She went on to say, "You know what? I would have been mad if somebody had done this to me. So I really apologize because." And she went on to say, "That's why I need that's why I need a coach." So that was interesting. But that aside, the other person said, when I pinged the other person, that person said, "Oh, I forgot about it." Right? And this happens very often, especially when you have so much on our minds, we often forget. And I think there's a very easy way to not to forget is to write everything down, right? And as I keep saying, these things are very simple, but it really comes down to the mindset. First, the mindset that it's important. If you're convinced, then the mindset that, it's okay to write everything down. You don't have to be a superhero and keep everything in this computer brain of yours. You write it down so there's a system to remind you, and that's the calendar, right? So interestingly, I was doing work for a startup, and the founder and her direct reports I was coaching. And across the organization, there was a bit of a tardiness. So we said, hey, why don't we start using the calendar across the organization? Now, a lot of invites kept coming in, and the owner was canceling meetings, right? Because she was often double booked, triple booked, and she had to cancel. She could only be in one place at a time. After a while, we sought feedback as to how the thing was going. Then it was quite a surprise. Couple of her direct reports said, it was a hot button for them because the owner was canceling at the last minute. Okay. And when this feedback was given to the owner, it came as a surprise to her because she never thought of it that way. So so calendar is again a very tactical thing, but again, it's a mindset. Calendar. We need to think of calendar as not just a tool. Calendar is really a commitment, and that's again a mindset. So we need to organize in advance, spend some time on the calendar, right? So beginning of the day, we need to see what our meetings are. If you're double book, triple book, make sure you take those things out. Make sure you give enough notice to the other person. Uh, you know, Maybe block appointments with yourself, right? Which is also very important. so that the calendar is not running you. I mean, you're running the calendar. Uh, get some urgent, some not just the urgent stuff done, but some of the important stuff done. So yeah, so if there's one advice I'd want to give, it's to basically start working with the calendar, and remember, a calendar is your commitment.
Absolutely. And also, Suman, the calendar, like you said, is a commitment device, right? But it is not going to help you unless that mindset shift happens. And it's very interesting, the boss's example that you gave, because her goals are completely different, right? And when you said she was surprised to find, because she didn't think of it like that, right? It makes so much sense, because at that point, when you're thinking about yourself only, you have all of these meetings which you have to get to, you're not able to juggle all of them, and you say, I'm going to cancel something. But and let a ball drop, for example, right? But the way that you're never thinking about how it affects the other people, because it's your goals and your priorities, right? So I see what a Herculean task it will be to kind of cultivate that, like Vijay said, I think, right? Thinking about the other people and respecting their time.
Absolutely. Like Vijay says it nicely. He says the mindset that it's my party and I can do as I please needs to change. Absolutely. It's really about empathy. What you just described is really about empathy and putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
Exactly. And Asli, if that's your name, you've joined us. Anything to add in about being on time? You can unmute and speak. Okay, maybe not. But yeah, Suman, so any other parting thoughts that you'd want to share? I want to mull this over, right? And think about, like, this boss's story that you talked about was a little too close for me for comfort. So I have some, thinking. I have some thinking to do myself. And I think this other one of, and talking about culture, right? The fact that we always we with the best intentions pick on everything that we want to do, right? Like, say yes to everything, be yes men, say we can do this, we can do that, and we can do this, and then you end up managing time poorly just because you've overextended yourself a lot, right? I think somewhere for me there's a lesson in that as well, which is when you said go through your calendar, really also cut down, right? One of the reasons why you can't make everything you want to make is because there's too much going on. But I think that's a good one. Hi Vijay, please jump in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, hi Suman, hi Devya. So another thing which we don't talk about when it comes to time is the fact that, when people say 2 minutes, it'll take me 2 minutes to get there. So time awareness is something which we don't follow at all. How many times have you heard that 5 minutes, I'll be there in 5 minutes? And that 5 minutes turns out to be half an hour, 45 minutes. So time awareness is something which is very crucial.
Sorry to interrupt. So I was saying we always had that joke, right? So IST was Indian stretchable time, and we've grown up like that. But I think what's happening is today we are integrating with the world economy. I mean, we can't be running with our own set of rules which are totally different. This is one area where I see a big gap between some of the Western cultures and here, where they have a lot more focus on the time. And I think it boils down to respect for other people's times.
Absolutely. So in fact, if we are more aware and respect other people's times, it would be actually beneficial for everyone involved.
Absolutely. And Divya, that point is absolutely right. I completely agree with you. This, it goes hand in hand with the ability to say no, and that's also a cultural thing. Often we have a big problem in saying no, right?
Yeah. Over promise, under deliver. So it's lovely how so many things are connected to so many other things, right, Suman? And that's why when you propose this topic, that we cannot escape the cultural aspect of how we perceive time here and in Eastern countries also, right, and other places. But this is fascinating. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think we're almost out of time. So great. It's been a great discussion. So if there are no other questions, I think we'll wrap up for this week, and hopefully we'll be a little more, on time with our topics going forward.
Perfect. I love these
Yeah,
discussions. So absolutely, yes.
super. Thank you,
Thanks,
Divya.
Vijay. Thanks.